Let's complete a demo that shows you how message retention works with topics that use Kafka consumers and consumer groups. Here I'm in my tenant KOP namespace, and I've clicked on topics. And here's my topic. To dig a little bit deeper, we'll look at where the data is stored. That's going to be important to understand this, how Pulsar stores its data. I'll click on my partition. And when I click over here on storage, I'm going to see that I have a ledger ID that has one entry in it. Ledgers are how Pulsar stores its data. And as long as you're writing data to the open ledger, there's only going to be one open ledger per topic. As long as you're writing to that open ledger, that data cannot be deleted. However, as soon as the ledger closes, it's eligible for deletion if there's nothing preventing it from being deleted. And the key here is that a Kafka consumer group with your subscription and a cursor does not prevent the deletion of a ledger, whereas in the case of Pulsar, it does. So the question then is, when can a ledger close and the next one opens? Here I've put a series of details on how ledgers work in Pulsar. By default, a ledger rollover can only be triggered after 10 minutes has passed. Then it will finally roll over when one of the following three conditions is met. Either a rollover time of 240 minutes has been received, the max number of entries has been 50,000, or the ledger size has gone over 2,048 megabytes. So the easiest way for us to show the loss of data because we never sent message retention is to write 50,000 messages without having the consumer turned on and show that that ledger gets deleted. And then we'll show how to turn on message retention to ensure that those messages do not get deleted. So first, let me add 50,000 messages so that this ledger 4,852 can close, and we'll see that it never makes it to the consumer. So we've already run the producer and consumer once. We had one message and it has been consumed. So now let me produce a little over 50,000 messages in IntelliJ without the consumer turned on. So here in IntelliJ, all I've done here is I've added a for loop to my producer code. And I specifically am editing the messages so that it includes the word hello with the integer. And then I'm going to send these messages over to my topic. Now, I edited it to have 100 just for simplicity, but in fact, let me add it to do 50,010. So I expect that as soon as we hit 50,000 messages, we're going to have a rollover in the ledger, and then it will be eligible for deletion, even though we've never consumed those messages. Let me go ahead and run this code, and I'll produce the 50,000 messages. Here in IntelliJ, we can see that we've finished publishing the 50,010 messages. And here I've refreshed in the console the list of ledgers for my topic and my partition. As you recall, previously the ledger ID was 4852. If you refresh immediately after finishing the publishing of the messages, you might see it there for a minute or two. And in fact, there is a cleanup process that happens that could delete it, so you might have to wait a little bit longer. But you can see it's gone now, and now it's 4971 with just 11 entries. Let's go ahead and start our consumer and confirm that, in fact, we don't get the 50,000 messages, we just get these 11. And here back in IntelliJ, I'm going to go to my consumer. I have again commented out this running equals false just so that it keeps running after it's consumed the first batch of messages it receives. We'll go ahead and let it get started. It's going to say running for just a bit, and then we'll see what messages it receives from its consumer group. And of course, it receives the last 11 messages. Next, let's turn on message retention for our topic so that even if there is a ledger rollover, those messages won't get lost. And that'll ensure that our consumer receives all the required messages. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this consumer. So here I am back in the UI. I'm going to go down to tenants namespaces, and the tenant I'm going to go to is KOP, and then KOP namespace. Under policy, there's something under cleanup policy, retention size and retention period, and we're going to have to specify both. Under retention size, I'm going to put -1, which means infinite storage. And under retention period, I'm going to do it for, we'll say 100 days. which is going to be 144,000. If I go ahead and click Save, this is going to ensure that even if there is a ledger rollover and a ledger closes, that data is not going to get deleted. And then when our consumer comes back up, it's going to have at least 100 days worth of data. Let's go ahead and publish 50,000 messages again, and let's test this out. Here I am back in IntelliJ. I'm going to keep the consumer turned off, but under producer, I'm going to publish another 50,000 messages. And now we have retention turned on for our topic. So we finished publishing our 50,010 messages. Just to guarantee when we look at the ledger IDs to make sure that they are not going to get deleted, I'm going to wait an extra 30 minutes or so before we hop on over to the UI. Here I've waited about 30 minutes, and you can see that the closed ledger 4971 with 50,000 entries is still there. So this time it's not getting deleted. And that's because we had turned on message retention for 100 days for this topic. Now let's head on over to IntelliJ again, start up our consumer, and show that it does in fact start to consume all of these messages. Back in IntelliJ, let me head on over to the consumer again. I'll go ahead and start it up, and we'll see that it starts to consume all of the second set of 50,000 messages that we had produced to this topic. And you can see here that it's going to go ahead and consume all of those messages. As a final reminder where that message retention is set, if I go to tenants and namespaces, select your tenant and your namespace, I'll then go ahead and go to policy. And if I scroll down, we go to cleanup policy under message or retention size and retention period. If you set megabytes to -1, that means infinite storage. And you set the retention period to the number of minutes, in this case 144,000, to correspond to 100 days. So no matter how much space you need for 100 days worth, you'll be able to save 100 days worth of messages.